Hello, everyone. So we have arrived to the fourth session of our Dive in Search of Pearls journey. And I trust you have enjoyed the ride so far and the dive-in so far. And so today, yes, if we have persevered so far, going through the previous steps, we should be ready today to actually pry the pearl open, the oyster open. Whether you have chosen one or the other approaches that I had suggested, the chronological approach or the section by section approach to the writings of St. Maximilian Kolbe, or if you have taken advantage of the subject index, looking for a topic that was of particular interest for you, or whether you have instead opted for the random approach, opening the writings and waiting to see what was coming to you. And also, regardless of the perspective, you felt inclined to consider the spiritual perspective or the theological perspective, the relational or the apostolic perspective, or also if you have been interested in discovering the leadership style of St. Maximilian Kolbe, I am sure that at this point, if you have invested time in reading, you have been able to discover some unique pearls. As I had mentioned, they might be different in size, in shape, value, and color, but all of them are certainly very precious. For instance, we have come probably to realize that St. Maximilian, from an early age, was very committed to a genuine relationship with God. If you have read his letters or his journal entries, you have certainly come to realize how his spiritual life was very committed from the start, nourished by prayer, by a solid prayer life, by self-denial, by active charity. You might have been surprised, perhaps, to discover that he experienced scruples and how he had been wisely helped to deal with them and to overcome them. And eventually he became a great spiritual director, precisely maybe for having experienced some of those difficulties. But you might have come across and discovered that he had a very special relationship with saints like Gemma Galgani, Saint Gemma Galgani, and how he had found so much inspiration in her diary. He went on even to say that it benefited him more than a week-long retreat or a couple of retreats to read her diary, and he read it repeatedly, supposedly. Of course, we already perhaps know that he had a special devotion for the not yet canonized Therese of Lisieux, the Carmelite saint, and he had actually made a deal with her, praying for her canonization. This might not appear from the writings, but we do know that he kept an image of Saint Therese by the door of the sacristy, close to the cell, and even before her being a canonized saint, so close to him was her spirituality and what she had been given. Anyhow, as we progress in reading his writings, we will notice how his spiritual life became perhaps less and less focused on his own efforts and more characterized by an attitude of surrender, docility to the action of the Holy Spirit through the Immaculata. I don't want to do any spoiler alert, but if you pay attention, you will notice that both in his journal entry, in his letters, in articles, there is an expression that is very frequently used by St. Maximilian: let yourself be led by the Immaculata, by the Holy Spirit, by divine providence, whatever variation of it. But the concept of letting yourself be led, allow yourself to be guided, is a great indicator of what characterizes spiritual life. His faith-centered approach to the spiritual life, not so much as our own climbing to become holy, but our letting the Holy Spirit work in us through the Immaculata. Well, if you had been interested in his theological insights, certainly you have come to realize that many of these unique, brilliant theological insights that he would share were springing forth from the depths of his spiritual life and matured on his knees, no doubt. Of course, we have also perhaps seen how he treasured family bonds and friendships, and how he invested time in cultivating them. The time he spent in keeping correspondence with family members, his mom, his brother, who was also Franciscan, and different friends, is an indicator. And of course, his apostolic zeal transpires from every single page, whatever, no matter what he might have been addressing at a given time. We might have also discovered his clever skills as an apologist. If you have approached some of his writings, you might have noticed how he was using personal experiences of meeting someone on a train or while traveling or in whatever situation, and engaging in a conversation. And then he would record that conversation, put it in an article format. But those are beautiful example of how he was able to engage people through faith and reason in a dialogue, and bringing them to discover the truth of the faith. And that is his unique catechetical approach, or even, as I said, as an apologist. But also, certainly we can discover his compelling way to illustrate his vision, his goals, how he would be able to get people on fire, because he was on fire with his ideals, his vision for the salvation of all souls through the Immaculata, for the winning of every heart for Christ through the Immaculata. You also, as I indicated as a possible perspective, you might have checked into or tried to detect his leadership style, and be amazed at seeing how he was really able to express a beautiful evangelical leadership style, especially when dealing with challenging personalities or situations, and also his innovative genius as a manager. I am sure that if we had time to share the pearls that we have individually discovered, began to discover, we would point out all this and much more. And I trust that you are keeping a little journal yourself of the pearls that you are discovering, because they are precious. However, as we attempt to pry the oyster open, we come to realize that certainly, while all these different pearls are precious, there is among all these fine pearls, one that stands out in an incomparable way. And certainly this finest pearl is Our Lady herself. Our Lady, the Immaculata, Our Lady whom he loves to call Immaculata, but also Mamusha, a Polish word which means mommy, the word that the children use for their own mom, and that shows the intimacy that he shared with her. Our Lady is ever present. She is the ever present pearl of his life. It has been noted by people who have approached St. Maximilian, scholars, but also devotees and people from all over, that while unquestionably for him, God, the Most Holy Trinity, is the source, the center, and the goal of everything, it has been noted that Our Lady, while she is God's creature, she is God's instrument, she's not a goddess for Maximilian, clearly. She is at the same time occupying a central place, as I said, in his life, in his work, in his writings, in his soul, in his mind. Why is that? Why is he so taken by Our Lady so as to see her everywhere? Many explanations have been suggested and presented, but for the sake of brevity during our session, I like to share with you the one I have come to agree with, that Father Giuseppe Simbula, the author of the introduction that we also find in the two-volume set of the writings, the explanation that he offers, I have come to agree with. And this is what he writes, and I am going to quote him just to do justice to his interpretation. You will find this in the volume 1, pages 212 to 213. He says, how is that Our Lady is so central? Above all, it comes from his specific charism, that is, from a specific grace granted to him. Each saint, in fact, each Christian who is attentive to the to the grace of God, is touched by a special mystery of the divine life or of Christian life. And in that mystery, one finds the strength to fulfill one's baptismal promises. God's grace touched Father Kolbe through the mystery of Mary Immaculate. And then Father Simbula goes on to say, of course, this personal charism of his was favored by his Polish and family environment he grew up in, and found also a favorable ground in the Franciscan theological spiritual tradition, which was imbued with a Marian spirit. And as you might know, the Franciscan had played a great role in clarifying the truth about Our Lady's Immaculate Conception, in the defense of the truth of the Immaculate Conception. And Father Kolbe, of course, developed intellectually within this beautiful context, as Father Simbula continues to say, also the apparitions of Our Lady and the messages of Our Lady during the apparition of the Miraculous Meadow and Lourdes had a very, very profound impact on Father Kolbe. And it is precisely on the basis of these messages and of these two apparitions that he delved even deeper into the mystery of the Immaculate Conception. So I like to close with this expression from Father Simbula, precisely because the Immaculata is the greatest work of the three divine persons. Father Kolbe sees reflected in her, as though in a most clear mirror, the whole Trinitarian mystery. But he goes on to say that the second feature that emerges with equal importance and clarity from the writings of St. Maximilian may be expressed in that all that God has worked in Our Lady, in the Immaculata, in the Immaculate Conception, is done on behalf of all of us, of all Christians. She is present as an instrument of God's grace, of support through her maternal help, as a guide, as a model through her example of authentic discipleship of Jesus. And of course, St. Maximilian didn't just see this from an intellectual only point of view or just a vague spiritual approach. He saw all this as something that was a path of life, a path for a Christian life. You might have heard an expression where he says, this is a way of life. Even the way he understood then and gave expression to all of this truth through the militia of the Immaculata was, in his own words, a way of a Catholic life, a very complete approach to living our Catholic faith in a very incarnational way. Our Lady is not just an ideal for us up there. I was just considering a few days ago how the word ideal that Maximilian likes to use very frequently could be misunderstood in our modern way of using the word ideal as something that is, okay, just an intellectual dream or desire. For him, ideal meant a way, something very concrete, the path that God himself had marked for him to respond to his plan to become all that he was called to become. And he offers all that through his personal example, through his writings, through his vision of what the Militia de Immaculata is. But of course, there is much more that we could say. And at this point, since you have persevered through all these introductory sessions this far, I would like to invite you to consider joining me again as we'll attempt to dive deeper and allow this finest pearl to be more fully revealed. So there is much more to say and to discover about who Our Lady is in relation to God, in relation to all of us, and how St. Maximilian saw the truth of the Immaculate Conception as a blueprint for our life individually, for our life as a church, for our life as whole of humanity. And the Militia de Immaculata that he founded, again, was not simply for him just an additional Marian association out there. For him was a way of life, a way of responding to God's plan. So the Militia de Immaculata certainly is in the Catholic Church a public association of the faithful, but there is more to it, to what he meant and understood and envisioned for the Militia of the Immaculata and for all of us who might be called, who are called according to him, to follow Our Lady and to be united with her in our journey of discipleship, of Christian witness in the world, to respond to the beautiful plan of God. So thank you again for having persevered so far. And you might be wondering if there is a homework this time. And I simply would suggest continue to read, continue to dive in according to one of the above approaches and perspective, and try to dive in on a regular basis, 10, 15 minutes at least each day, and keep a journal. Keep the journal of the purse that you find. That will be special, and I hope to see you when we'll be diving deeper and discover more of who Our Lady is in Saint Maximilian and who she is and could be for us and for the Church and the world today. God bless you all.